Hello, I'm SeungWon Seo, a researcher from the ICLR lab. Today, I'd like to introduce a paper titled CaPo Cooperative Plan Optimization for Efficient Embodied Multi-Agent Cooperation. Thanks to the recent advance in large language model, there has been a surge in research on LLM-based agents. These agents leverage the reasoning capability and common sense knowledge of LLMs to generate plans that align with given instruction or goal. For example, when given a task description like transport one mouse, one pen, and one purse to the bed, the agents need to search for the specific object within the room and formulate a plan to transport them to the designated location. A representative prior work in this area is Coela, which proposed a modular framework for multi-agent cooperation. In Coela, each agent used an LLM to generate collaborative plan. However, since it generates only one-step plan at a time, this can lead to redundant action among agents or unnecessary movement, thereby reducing cooperation efficiency. CaPo addressed this issue by introducing metaplan generation, where agents engage in pre-task discussion before executing action. This enables them to generate a long-term plan collaboratively. Both CaPo and Coela operate under the same experimental setting, characterized by partial observability and decentralized control. As a result, agents obtain different pieces of information depending on their respective location and must independently plan actions that contribute to achieve the shared goal efficiently. Before diving into CaPo, let's first briefly review the previous work, Coela. A more detailed seminar on this paper is available on our lab YouTube channel under the title Embodied Multi-Agent Cooperation with Efficient Communication. I highly recommend watching it, as it also provides a comprehensive overview of multi-agent research in general. Coela proposed an agent framework for multi-agent cooperation in partially observable and decentralized control environment. It is one of the first study to introduce a modular architecture based on LLM. The agent framework consists of 5 key modules: perception, memory, communication, planning, and execution. Using the communication module, agents exchange necessary information through natural language message powered by an LLM. This enables them to build a collaborative plan. The planning module then selects the most appropriate action based on the current state, stored environmental information in memory, and knowledge about other agents. Through this framework, agents are able to efficiently cooperate to achieve a shared goal. However, Coela is structurally limited to generating only the agent's next single action. As a result, Coela agent must regenerate a new plan after every action is completed. While this allows agents to plan optimal action for the current state, embodied agents typically need to operate over a long time horizon to achieve their goals. In fact, one of the benchmarks used in Coela requires agents to perform tasks over 3,000 steps. Given such long trajectory, there is no guarantee that a locally optimal action will be beneficial in the long run. Additionally, Coela performs asynchronous communication. In this framework, communication is treated as just another action, and whether or not an agent chooses to communicate is left entirely to its discretion. For example, even if a message is generated by the communication module, it may never be sent if the planning module does not include the act of sending it as part of the plan. As a result, agents often do not immediately respond to message received in the previous state. Moreover, messages are stored without timestamp, making it difficult for the agent to determine their relevance during planning. By the time an agent references another message, it may already be outdated and no longer valid. To address the limitation of previous approach, CaPo performed cooperative plan optimization through multi-turn discussion among agents using an LLM, allowing them to generate a long-term plan called a metaplan. This process consists of 2 main stages. Let me begin by explaining the first stage. At the start of the simulation, each agent begins operating from a different location. Due to the partial observability of the environment, each agent perceives only a limited portion of the world. As a result, their memory contains different localized information. At this point, one agent is assigned the role of the planner, while the other agent takes on the role of critic. The planner agent is responsible for generating a long-term plan for all agents in the environment. However, there is an immediate issue. Since the planner can only observe its immediate surrounding, it lacks global knowledge of the environment. Moreover, it does not know the location of the other agent or what new information they may have gathered. Consequently, the initial plan created by the planner is likely to be biased by its own local memory and may be suboptimal. To overcome this issue, CaPo introduced a predefined communication protocol based on multi-turn discussion between agents. The planner generates not only the initial plan, but also message to be sent to the other agent. This message is intended to solicit feedback to improve the plan. The critic agent then responds with natural language message. Based on the planner message and their own local memory, they generate feedback aimed at improving the plan to better achieve the shared goals through efficient cooperation. Each critic also evaluates whether they are satisfied with the current plan. If all critic agents express satisfaction, the multi-turn discussion ends. Through this structured discussion protocol, the author designed a system in which the planner can generate a collaborative plan without being overly biased by its own perspective. Initially, I was concerned that this discussion might continue indefinitely. However, the author states that in internal experiment, the process typically converts within 3 rounds, and in practice, they imposed a maximum of 3 discussion turns to prevent potential infinite loop. Through the first process introduced earlier, CaPo successfully generated a meta plan to be used at the beginning of the simulation. However, the environment in which embodied agents operate is dynamically changing. Since each agent only has partial observability, they often acquire new information only upon encountering it. For example, as shown in the first image, an agent only realizes that a donut is present once it arrives in the kitchen. After several simulation steps, as shown in the second image, agent pick up the donut and move it to the refrigerator. In this way, previously unseen objects can be discovered or objects can be relocated, leading to continuous environmental changes. As a result, the initially generated meta plan may become invalid over time. This can cause agents to perform inefficient or unnecessary action, ultimately degrading the overall cooperation performance. To solve this issue, the planner agent must be capable of generating plans that adapt to environmental changes. To this end, CaPo introduced a mechanism called progress adaptive planning. This mechanism is triggered when an agent perceives a significant environmental change related to the task goal. Once such a change is detected, that agent is assigned the role of the new planner and generate an updated plan reflecting the new information. For instance, consider the example in the image. An agent's original plan was to search the kitchen, then move on to search the bathroom. Now imagine the agent discovered the target object donut while searching the kitchen. Continuing on to the bathroom as originally planned would no longer make sense. At this point, progress adaptive planning kicks in and the agent generates a new plan based on the updated information. This updated planning process proceeds in the same way at the first stage using multi-turn discussion. The agent that detects the important change becomes the planner, while the other agents act as critic and provide feedback on the new plan. Finally, let's summarize the overall structure of CaPo once more. CaPo is built on a modular architecture similar to that of Koala. Agent perceives the environment through the perception module, and the observed information is stored in the memory module. If the simulation is at its initial stage, the metaplan generation page begins. Among the agents in the environment, one is assigned the role of planner, while the others serve as critic. The initial metaplan generated by the planner may be biased due to its limited local memory, but this concern is addressed through multi-turn discussion with the critic agent. Once all critics express satisfaction with the proposed plan, the metaplan is finalized and the simulation proceeds based on it. At each step, the current action is parsed based on the current state, and the metaplan and the resulting action is decomposed into low-level behavior by the execution module, which are then carried out using the benchmark API. For example, if the plan specifies check the cabinet, the plan parsing module interprets this into low-level actions such as navigate to the cabinet and grasp and open the cabinet handle, which are then executed sequentially. If a target-related object is discovered inside the cabinet, this continues new progress and the progress adaptive planning module is triggered. This leads to another round of multi-turn discussion, ensuring that the plan is updated accordingly. Through this mechanism, CaPo maintains the validity of its plan in dynamic environment, adapting continuously as the situation evolves. When working with LLM, one of the most important factors for both reproducibility and deeper understanding is knowing what prompt was used. With that in mind, before diving into the experimental section, let's briefly take a look at the prompts used in CaPo. The first prompt we will examine is the one used to generate the metaplan. This prompt consists of two main components, the task description and the instruct head. The task description provides background information about the task itself, while the instruct head imposes additional constraints on how the metaplan should be generated. For example, it may specify the expected format of the metaplan or the list of available actions, helping guide the model to produce a clear and executable plan. The second prompt we will look at is the one used to generate a feedback message in response to the metaplan created by the planner. This prompt is composed of 5 main components: the task description, instruct head, agent state, dialogue history, and the previous metaplan. Since the full prompt is quite long, I will first explain the first two components. The task description provides background information about the task at hand, while the instruct head defines constraints for generating a feedback message that evaluates the proposed metaplan. Following that, the prompt includes an example of the expected output along with the agent state, dialogue history, and the previous metaplan. Based on this information, the agent is able to evaluate the previous metaplan and generate a feedback message that includes its own suggestion for improvement. Now let's look at the experimental conduct in CaPo evaluated in two environments. The first is Communicative Watch and Help, built on Virtual Home. It includes 5 household tasks across 2 test environments. Agents must collaborate to plan and act towards shared goal. Only objects outside containers are initially visible, and opening actions are required to view inside. Messages are limited to 500 characters per frame, with a 250-step time horizon. Each task consists of 3 to 5 sub-goals, and failure to complete them in time ends the episode. The second is the 3D World Transport Challenge, based on 3D World. It features more realistic layout, container, and tool for object transport. Goals involve transporting objects from 2 categories, food and stuff. Each episode has 10 target objects and 2 to 5 containers, allowing multiple objects to be carried. Unlike Communicative Watch and Help, agents must rotate in 15-degree step to observe the full room. Communication is again limited to 500 characters with a 3000 step horizon. The baseline used for the experimenter are broadly divided into three categories. The first category consists of classic agent, including the MCTS-based hierarchical planner and the rule-based hierarchical planner. The second category includes LLM-based agent, with three representative methods: Coella, ProAgent, and Loco. Coella provides a modular framework for multi-agent planning communication and long-horizon task execution, but it generates independent short-term plan for each agent. In contrast, ProAgent and Loco focused on collaborative planning for cooperative agent. They incorporate mechanisms such as reflection loop or environmental feedback to verify and refine plan. The third category involves heterogeneous agent, where agents with different planning and communication mechanisms collaborate in the same environment. For example, a setting where Coella agent work alongside CaPo agent would fall into this category. The experimental on the 3D World Transport Challenge were conducted with both classic agent and LLM-based agent. For the LLM-based agent, experiments were performed using various language models including GPT series and Llama. Let's go through the results step by step. First, the author conducted a single agent experiment using the rule-based planner RHP and found that its performance was consistently worse than all multi-agent experiment. This consistent result demonstrates the effectiveness of multi-agent cooperation in real-world inspired tasks. Second, when comparing the multi-agent setup, CaPo consistently outperformed all baseline across the board. It maintained superior performance regardless of the LLM used and as the agent brain. Notably, even when paired with a relatively less powerful LLM like GPT 3.5 Turbo, CaPo still achieved significantly higher performance than the Coella baseline. CaPo's performance gains stem from the use of metaplanning and progress adaptive metaplanning, which together provide strategic and coherent guidance for agent collaboration, ultimately boosting cooperation effectiveness. The experimental result in Communicative Watch and Help shows a similar trend. When using GPT-4 as the agent backbone, CaPo consistently outperformed Coella, ProAgent, and Loco in terms of performance. Interestingly, when CaPo is paired with MHP, meaning the CaPo agent independently generate and update the metaplan, it still outperforms both a team of two MHP agents and a hybrid team of MHP and Coella. This result provides consistent evidence of CaPo's effectiveness in enhancing multi-agent cooperation. From a personal perspective, I found it notable that in the heterogeneous agent setting, the performance gap was only 2 points, whereas in the GPT-4 agent setting, the gap was 6 points. This suggests that while CaPo is still strong in heterogeneous environment, it doesn't reach the same level of effectiveness as in homogeneous setting. In my opinion, the reason for this may be that in the heterogeneous setting, there are no agents to serve as critic during metaplan generation, which leads to the planner agent producing a metaplan bias by its own limited memory. Had CaPo include mechanism to infer the intention of other agents, even in the absence of explicit critics, it could have led to even more compelling result and potentially an interesting research direction. Next, I'd like to discuss two particularly interesting experiments from the ablation study section. The first experiment examined the effect of increasing the number of cooperating agents. The author conducted cooperative experiment with agent counts rating from 1 to 4. They observed that cooperation efficiently improves as the number of agents increases. However, since the environment is not complex enough to fully require the participation of 4 agents, the performance with 3 agents is not significantly different from that with 4. From this, I personally felt that a more complex environment would be necessary to better evaluate the benefit of multi-agent cooperation. The second experiment analyzed how quickly agents reach convergence during planning. In theory, CaPo agents could engage in an infinite number of discussions until consensus is reached, which would incur a significant communication cost. However, the results show that in practice, agents typically reach agreement within 3 rounds of discussion. We've now reached the end of our discussion on the paper CaPo. CaPo is a method proposed to overcome the limitation of CoLA. It enables agents to collaboratively establish unbiased long-term plan through multi-turn discussion and to flexibly update their cooperation strategies through progress adaptive planning in response to dynamic change in the environment. The experimental results demonstrate CaPo's consistent performance across various LLM configurations and highlight the importance of strategic collaboration in complex environments with long horizon goals. This paper meaningfully illustrated that beyond simply generating individual plans, the entire process of sharing, evaluating, and revising plans is crucial to successful cooperation. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.